Today is International Equal Pay Day. The main objective is to accelerate the pace of closing the gender pay gap to achieve equal pay for work of equal value by 2030, a target of Sustainable Development Goal 8. This is central to the new social contract that demands fair wages, including minimum living wages, good quality, climate-friendly jobs, and equality and inclusion for all. As we celebrate the day, experts are calling for 575 million new and decent jobs globally. They're also asking for 1 billion informal jobs where women are overrepresented to be formalized. The ILO estimates that investing in universal child care and long-term care would create 280 million jobs by 2030, and it would boost the employment rate of women by 78%, and 84% of these jobs would be formal. Governments all over the world are being urged to help trade unions across the globe to achieve this goal. In Ghana, women are said to be paid 34.2% less than men. This is according to data from the first quarter of the 2022 Annual Household Income and Expenditure Survey. The gender gap is lowest among paid workers with tertiary education or more, where women earn 12.7% less than their male counterparts. The gender wage gap is highest among workers with basic education, which stands at 60.1%, followed by workers with no education, which stands at 54.0%. Now, on your screens, you can see there workers with no education, the gap is 54.0%. Workers with basic education, the gap is 60.1%. Now, how do we bridge this gap? And let me share more with you. If you go to the private sector, where if you want to do a comparison between formal and informal, the gap at the private sector, when it comes to formal, is 29.9%. If you come to informal sector, it's 58.7%. And you go to the public sector, the gap stands at 10.5%. That's women are paid 10.5% less than their male counterparts. How do we bridge this gap? I've been joined by labor experts and former employment minister Austin Game. First, I'm grateful for your time, sir. First, what's your reading into the fact that women are paid less than their male counterparts, whichever way you want to look at it?
Thank you, Aisha. I am going to be very open and honest with you in this matter. I think that the researchers or the findings by the Ghana Statistical Service might be good enough, but not representative enough of the reality on the ground. I work for a number of companies, both in private and public. When you talk about a wage structure or salary structure, is one uniform structure, and therefore job evaluations are carried out, job analysis are made, people's job worth are determined, and they are placed on the ranges where they belong. The entry point is the only requirement from the beginning. Going forward, in the private sector in particular, where I do know, it is based on your level of productivity. And so therefore, I am highly troubled and amazed about the kind of information being placed in the public domain vis-a-vis, let's take the public sector as an example, 10.something% less than that of the men. It means the whole government machinery is being called into some kind of disorder.
Interestingly, so if Mr. Game, if you look at the private sector and public sector, the gap looks wider with the private sector than the public sector. The public sector, for instance, when it comes to formal jobs, it stands at 10.8%. 10.5%, whereas if it comes to the private sector with formal jobs, it comes to 29.9%. So you see that the gap is wider when it comes to the private sector than the public sector.
Yeah, I think they haven't done the public a lot of good. To be honest with you, let's take an example, a teacher. A teacher is a teacher. If you are let's say, trained college teacher or a degree holding teacher or a PhD holder teacher, so you are. And the placement on the structure is the same. If you enter today and you are placed on, let's say, level 21 and you are earning, let's say, 4,500, so it is for a woman, so it is for a man. Whether private sector or public sector, entry point is what is required based on your qualification, not necessarily experience, but the criteria that you meet. So yes, I think that what they have done is okay, but they need to ventilate on their findings further with footnotes telling us a story about why are they being paid less than the men. I do not think it is entirely correct. If you take the hospitality center in the private sector, in the hospitality sector, for instance, chefs are almost all of them are men. All the chefs are men. All the cooks, most of them are women in the kitchen. And some of them are in the restaurant together with some men. So your pay will be determined based upon your job worth and what you are brought in. You know, so clearly I'm amazed and troubled about these things. It's no longer there. It's an old antediluvian type of thing that existed before independence and thereafter. But today, I do not think it is so.
Mr. Garment, let's face this reality. Could it be that many women are not attaining managerial positions where they can actually earn better salaries compared to their male counterparts?
That is also not entirely correct. Many of the women in the private sector, in the public sector, are the HR managers and directors. They earn the same like their male counterparts. Indeed, let me confirm to you, I work for a number of private sectors. I work for a number of public sectors. And I can guarantee you the pay structure is the same. The legal director in a certain certain public sector and the HR director are all female. And they earn the same like their male counterparts. It's a job worth. If you are a director and the core job of that organization is placed on, let's say, some of the jobs like maybe an operational director, and you are HR director, you may be on the same scale, but the placement on the steps may be different. That is not to say that somebody is being paid differently. It's because they've placed premium on the core role that will bring in some level of income for disbursement in that company. So clearly, it is not. It's that we need footnotes. We need clarification on the findings. If in the informal sector, people are being paid discriminately because the strength required to undertake such jobs in the informal sector is not in the domain of women, it becomes a different story. If you take the mining sector, for instance, the bulldozer operators, less than 2% of them may be female, indeed less than. And they are being paid, let's say, $5,000 a month, and the female who may not withstand the level of vibration that these bulldozers bring about are being paid, let's say, $4,000. It does not mean a discrimination. That's why we need footnotes. Just taking the raw data may not survive.
Provided we agree that it's not discrimination, but definitely there is a gap, because you have just alluded to the fact that, I mean, generally, because of the make of women, they cannot actually do certain kinds of jobs, so that employers may not categorically say they are not looking for females, but at the back of their minds, they will employ males rather than females for certain kinds of jobs. How then do we bridge this gap? Or is it that it's unbridgeable?
Well, that perception will have to be dropped, because there is a scientific criteria that is used in determining people's job worth, by way of job evaluation, the analysis to ensure that the job spread cut across in a manner that is appropriate to make the company or the organization viable and productive. And therefore, if steps are not taken and we do not ventilate on these issues properly, merely talking about it that way may be in the realm of speculation and so forth and so on. The reality, however, is that gaps will always be there because of, and it could be female who are earning more than the men. It could be female who are earning more than the men in terms of the gap, because their job worth and the value and premium being placed on it by the employer fits the purpose of that lady that is in that organization and not the male. That doesn't really, it's about job worth, not personality, not male, not female. So whoever fits into that space will be the one that will earn that money. I think that something ought to be done, and I concede that the Ghana Statistical Service are statistical people biased, so to say, but if you come to determining certain criteria vis-a-vis job worth, evaluation, and analysis and so forth, is more in the domain of experts who they are not necessarily, into that field. And so the ventilation on the numbers and the interviews conducted is very premium in this case. I do not think we have that challenge so much in Ghana in the formal sector. In the informal sector, it may be there in a very limited space, but if you take Kayayo as an example, Kayayo is a worker. If you go to the market and you meet a female Kayayo who is to carry your goods from one space to one end to another end, and you're going to be paid 10 cedis, whether you are male or female, it will be 10 cedis. That is it. So clearly we have to distinguish between these things. And I go into finding out these things also, and I think that it's not entirely correct because they lack, clarification to the numbers that they have assigned for us to talk about.
Mr. Gami, I'm grateful for your time. He's a labor analyst and also a former employment minister.